In New York, prosecutors are reportedly preparing to file criminal tax charges against Donald Trump's family business. A 2-year investigation by the Manhattan District Attorney has focused on the finances of the former president and the Trump organisation amid allegations of tax evasion. A deadline for President Trump's lawyers to respond with final arguments as to why criminal charges should not be filed it winds up today. Frederick Lawrence is a distinguished lecturer at the Georgetown University Law Centre. Frederick Lawrence, welcome to breakfast.
Good to be with you, Fran.
What charges is the Trump organisation potentially facing here?
Potentially, the charges could include major tax fraud issues such as inflating the value of the assets of the corporation, which would allow you to be able to borrow more money against it. That's actually not tax fraud. That's just straight up fraud. Tax fraud comes in when you undervalue the assets and you pay less than you should in tax. So that's where the case may be headed. But so far, it looks like the real focus is on things that are a lot smaller than that, such as employees, particularly the chief financial officer, receiving a company car, apartment to live in, tuition payments for his grandchild to go to school, and not paying taxes on any of that compensation.
So the focus primarily at the moment is on essentially fringe benefits tax and wrongly and not paying it.
Correct, and there's a reason for that, and that is this is the oldest approach in the prosecutor's arsenal. You start with somebody you can get to, you bring a case against that person, you squeeze, and you try to get that person to turn on somebody further up the chain. So Mr. Trump has been very effective, not just while he was president, but for years and years and years, of staying out of the clear, written, articulable chain of command. So it's very hard to prove he had anything to do with anything. How do you prove a case against him? You got to get testimony. The person most likely to do that is a man named Alan Weisselberg. He's the chief financial officer. How do you get Alan Weisselberg to try to talk? Well, you go after him for that kind of fringe benefits tax. But I have to tell you, Fran, so far it appears it has not been successful getting him to talk and to say what he knows about the former president. So far, what the Manhattan DA seems to have available is a case against Weisselberg and the company for this kind of fringe benefit tax fraud.
Okay, and what you're saying is so far they haven't managed to turn Alan Weisselberg. I think that's what you're saying. So they have not succeeded there. And are they also at the same time then in danger of an own goal? Because, you know, Donald Trump was again crying witch hunt this week about these charges. If you're just going after someone on fringe benefits tax, it hardly seems worth the effort. It feels like going all out just to find anything you can to throw against the guy, doesn't it? Is there a danger in that politically?
Well, of course. It may not be an own goal, but it could be a full-time 0-0, I think. It feels a lot smaller than people thought it was going to be.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
And that is... Yeah, and I think that is in fact a risk. Now, look, as we're talking right now, it's the end of the day here in the States, and presumably the defense team has been meeting with the prosecutors all day today, so they're making a final decision. I think there's still a good likelihood that they will go forward with the case that they have, which will be actually a case against the company itself. And that sounds odd to have a criminal case against a company itself, because of course you can't put a company in jail, but you can fine them and you can have penalties. So there could be tax cases brought against the Trump organization, and then there could be individual cases against employees such as Weisselberg. And then the question is, at the end of the day, when Weisselberg is actually facing the prospect of jail, does he turn and cooperate?
But what you're saying is at the moment there's no likelihood of charges against Donald Trump himself, because Donald Trump, didn't he separate himself from the Trump organization when he became president? He
did separate himself. He put it in a trust, I believe, in his children's name and also Weisselberg's name. But it also goes back to time before that. But it's not just that he separated himself from it. It's that there's no paper record that leads to him. You're talking about somebody who doesn't use email. People think about him using Twitter, and of course he uses Twitter. He doesn't use email. There are no written records with his name on it. So you can't make a written case against him. If there's a case to be made, it will have to be made with testimony. And if it's going to be testimony, somebody's got to be ready to testify.
And if there's no written, there's no written link, is there any other evidence to suggest that Donald Trump has a role in the company now still?
Hard to know. He seems to be someone who's involved on a regular basis, but this is very hard to know from the outside. There's a reason that he has managed to stay out of this kind of trouble for a long time with his various real estate businesses, not staying out of civil trouble. There've been bankruptcy cases, there've been civil claims against him, but staying out of criminal trouble. And right now, it's hard to see how the case is going to be made against him individually.
Donald Trump's personal lawyer described all this as ridiculous and outrageous. The lawyers are given until today to respond with any last arguments as to why criminal charges should not be filed against the Trump organisation. I mean, is there any chance they can come up with arguments that would persuade the prosecutors, well, it's not worth proceeding here?
Highly unlikely. Ron Fischetti is a very experienced defense lawyer. He's supposed to say those kinds of things. In truth, this is not the kind of case that's normally brought against a corporation, but this is not a typical case. I find it very hard to imagine that the prosecution will have gotten this far and will decide not to go forward. You were saying before it would be like an own goal not to be able to bring a bigger case, but an own goal is better, I suppose, than not showing up for the match at all.
Does this have any impact on the bigger game? Let's put it that way. Donald Trump's on the campaign trail again. He's been telling supporters at a rally in Ohio he might run in 2024. Would he be able to run for the presidency if his business dealings are found to be fraudulent?
Be able to run. It would be legal for him to run. The question is, will it affect him politically? But it does not literally disqualify him from being able to run.
All right. Frederick Lawrence, thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure. Nice being with you.
Frederick Lawrence is a distinguished lecturer at the Georgetown University Law Centre.